dialed in but hadn't been accepted.
You should just dial in, and then it asks you to state your name, and you just do that. Follow the cues from the conference.
Okay. Well, let's get started and see what happens. Okay.
All right.
Call this work session to order. We'll start with attendance among the assembly members. So I'm just going to try to read out people's names, and please say if you are here. Fred Dyson. Okay. Cameron Perez Radia. All right. Miss Quinn Davidson.
I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Miss Quinn Davidson. Mr. Constant.
Here.
Mr. Constant's here. Mr. Peterson.
I heard him earlier. He's on the line, I believe.
Pete, are you here? I think I saw him. Pete, if you're there, we can't hear you. We'll come back to you. Mr. Weddleton?
Here.
Thank you. I'm here for Dunbar. Miss Kennedy?
Here, and not hearing anything off of the Teams meeting, just using the cell phone. Just letting you know. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rivera?
Present.
Okay. Ms. Zalatel?
Here.
Thank you. And Ms. LaFrance? Ms. LaFrance sent me a text saying that she was here, or about to be here. Okay. All right. Well, this, oh wait, no, she said she's not on yet. Okay. So, unfortunately, we had to reschedule this work session because we had a catastrophic failure of our technology on Friday, which apparently was city-wide, or at least municipality-wide, municipal government-wide. We were in the middle of a presentation from Mr. Schutte, a PowerPoint. Mr. Schutte, do you have that PowerPoint queued up again?
Through the chair, I don't. I could, but as I informed the clerk's office, I'm only here for the next 15 minutes, and I have a hard stop.
Okay. Is there anyone else from the administration who could conclude the presentation similar to what you were giving on Friday?
Yes, Nancy Burke and Rob Ford are on the line. It's a good time for you to chime in.
Nancy, are you there?
Both Nancy and Robin are on the Teams meeting.
Oh,
Extraordinary. Are we going to cancel this meeting again?
nope.
Nancy, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Were you able to dial into the conference bridge?
Oh, no, I'm just on Teams. I'll dial in.
Yes, please. Thank
Okay.
you. And Robin, if you can also dial into the conference bridge, that would be great.
Will do.
Thank you.
Ms. LaFrance, are you here now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, there's Susan. Okay.
Suzanne, could you please dial into the conference bridge as well? Because right now the Microsoft Teams is only going through the laptop's microphone instead of the room's microphone.
And I put the conference line on the chat, so you should be able to see it. It's 907-273-5190.
Okay, I will go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What is that noise?
I don't know.
Okay. Nancy, you on the conference bridge now?
There's Nancy.
Okay. Miss Burke? Miss Burke, was that you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you. Are you able to present the remainder of Mr. Schuete's presentation from Friday, or do you have some other update that you can give to us?
I can continue walking through the spreadsheet, although if Jason Buckenstead's on the line, I'm sure that there's parts that he would want to cover.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and get started with that, though? That would be great. Thank you.
I believe that we were on slide 8. Would you like me to share my screen?
Yes, please. Is she able to share her screen?
She should be able to. Let me double check.
Sure. Do I have the permission to share my screen?
One sec, let me double check.
Or do you have, if you have the PowerPoint, you could also just pull it up and I could announce which slide we're on.
You do have access to present, Nancy.
And okay, maybe I'm not seeing where the share screen button is.
Nancy, if you hover over keys, it pops up the
Oh,
little
okay.
box to hang up, etc. It's in there.
It's next to mute.
Ah, I've got it. Thank you. Hi, please. Getting ready to head out?
There we go. Okay.
Okay, so I believe that Robin might not be on mute.
Jennifer,
Hear you.
could you point the camera towards the presentation, please?
Mr. Chair, can you remind me, were we on the slide that talks about the good neighbor policy?
Do you remember, Chris, which slide you were
We
on?
had just gone, that was where we were starting to move, yes. But then Schuete went on a fast forward, and then we got disrupted. So you can start here.
Okay. So, working on challenges that, exist for a service provider in managing 300 plus people, there is a policy whereby if people are not following the rules that keep everyone safe, there are trespasses that will happen from this property. And the list you see here are the bullets, the reasons that would be used for a trespass or for a period out of the facility. So then, the next slide, and Mr. Chair, I'll just rely on you to stop me because I don't have visual cues on anybody right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when these people are ejected, and this is the work that the municipality's been doing with the shelters for several years now, at least for 2 years, in how do we individually manage these folks that are not able or not willing to follow the safe policies at shelters. Some require mental health services, others require individual plans. We may need to connect with parole officers or others if people are in that system. And so over time, what we can do is work with these individuals, figure out what's motivating for them, whether it's our proverbial carrot or stick, and we can get those numbers down. Currently at Brother Francis Shelter, we have almost nobody trespass from there because we've been able to work with that population, and some of the more challenging folks did move over to Bokie and Sullivan. Next slide. The Dempsey and Anderson ice rinks are being used for mass quarantine and isolation. There's 102 spaces right now for quarantine beds, 102 for isolation. Securitas is on board for security for these two facilities. It is of note that the air systems are separate for these facilities so that you can maintain basically two separate functioning systems in over one roof. We do have the EMT services from Team 1, which is typically in usual times they're a sports organization that provides support to races and other sporting events. They've been doing light medical response for people at the Sullivan Arena and Ben Bokie, and also here at Dempsey. We've seen that they've been able to refer a lot of potentially 911 calls or emergency resources by being able to help people manage things at a lower level. And again, this facility has the medical screening from the Orthopedic Physicians of Alaska. Next slide. So the coming attractions is we're working with mask makers to help ensure that we can provide at least cloth masks for people out in the community. We're particularly concerned about staff that are interacting with the shelter population. We anticipate that we may hit some nonprofit staffing issues if we're not able to be proactive about preventing spread in the community. The community donations are also being gathered for the Sullivan and Bokie, and that includes hygiene supplies and bedding supplies. And Beans Cafe has hired for the first time services, 2 service navigators who are going to help prioritize persons who are in Bokie and Sullivan arenas for housing referrals and connection with social service agencies. This is important because we're minimizing the flow of any external people into those shelters. And that's also one of the reasons we're standing up resources in the parking area rather than asking other agencies to send staff into the Sullivan or Bokie arenas. Next slide. Supporting and mobilizing the community social service agencies. We're anticipating some of the concerns and working with groups across the community like the Forker Group and association groups to see what's happening for nonprofits. Generally, we're hearing that there are workforce right now as employees are quarantining at home, and the functions that need to be covered by nonprofits are sometimes not able to be covered remotely, so there's some pinches going on in terms of having available staffing to do what's needed for clients in the moment. There's a lot of concern. Organizations have staff that are afraid, they have clients that are afraid. So there's a lot of work going on to be reassuring, to help people understand, healthy hygiene practices, social distancing. There could be other gaps in the system, including people who are already in housing who experience high levels of behavioral health needs becoming unstable due to the same concerns and fears happening for everyone else. There's also potential impacts with philanthropic resources. If the market remains low, the payout of a number of entities could be reduced. Transportation is limited. There's some uncertainties that remain about state budget, the state budget, and how federal funding might fill in gaps. And the state is still mid-progress in implementing some of the Medicaid changes that would be otherwise very helpful in this moment. so when we try to look for partners to really come out and support people and help engage those folks that we see out in the community, these are some of the constraints that the nonprofit sector is working with right now.
Mr. Chair.
To help minimize that, on the next slide you see...
I'm sorry, Nancy, one second. Mr. Constant, you have a question?
So what role are these nonprofits supposed to be playing in the people who are out on the streets that we're here to have this meeting about?
There's some background noise. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I don't understand what all of these nonprofit staffing challenges have to do with all the people in the streets that we're here to address at this work session.
Well, the short of it is we don't have people to go out and engage those folks.
Okay, so nothing then is what's happening.
Could you go? Want to continue with your presentation, Ms. Burke? Thank you.
So I would not describe it as nothing. I would describe it as us trying to reconfigure how that engagement happens. And so this Community Resources Hub is the first stab at it. I'm sure we'll have several other ideas and ways of thinking about it as we all pull together here to address the problems we're having. In the parking area, we've mapped out a space where we can have social service providers come down and engage and know that the space for having that engagement will be adequate to satisfy their risk managers and insurance providers at this time who are telling people they need to limit their face-to-face contact. So we hope to provide this space, and we've seen it today. We had 3 organizations down with us at this Community Resource Hub, engaging with people who are at the shelter and who want to make those connections to get to housing applications. So we will have, in the next week, we're prioritizing the list of people who are at the 2 mass shelter locations. We will have priority population folks that we're looking for, and we'll be making referral out for any open housing programs that are online. And at the moment, there is just a couple that are open. And so we hope that by creating this engagement space, creating the safe opportunity for nonprofits to restart that outreach work and to restart connecting with people, we can entice other housing entities to open programs and start the pipeline from housing flow. On the next slide, you just see some pictures of what it looks like, and you'll notice that the spacing of the tables is broad enough so that we can keep a 6-foot distance, but we still provide a booth that's somewhat confidential for people to meet. Looking at the next slide, looking at the summer, the challenge for homeless service locations, we've disrupted patterns, if you will, for people who've been homeless in this community for a number of years. We've changed major locations. We've seen an increase in camping near those facilities. The prior locations where Brother Francis Shelter is located, which is the subject of today's meeting, have become much more populated with tents, and basically everything is disrupted in our system. We've done some things to control the impacts around the neighborhood of the mass shelter location, including using the Anchorage Downtown Partnership as a partner, using Securitas patrols, and then the Beans Cafe has Phoenix on board. But we have seen a rise in camping not only at the 3rd Avenue location, but also along the Chester Creek Trail at this time. This leads us to the discussion of summer camp abatement and how that balances with the needs of the community. We are, not intervening on the 200 miles of trails in Anchorage is really not an option for this community, as we saw last year when there were fire hazards, and we see the buildup of waste material in camps that are allowed to remain for long periods of time, and it's not healthy for anyone. So in summer 2020, we're looking for the right balance of maintaining the camp abatement process, looking for strategies that we might use to help keep everyone safe during this time. But if you turn to the next slide, we agree that additional support is needed. And so a request has gone up to the state of Alaska to have Alaska National Guard support the services that we all agree on this summer. We think that that could reasonably be support for cleanup process around the camp abatement that needs to happen, monitoring or supporting work that would reduce the impact of the 3rd Avenue areas, and also looking for additional outreach locations where we can provide a similar sort of safe space for nonprofits to engage people around the community in a smaller footprint than the one we're doing at Bokie and Sullivan. So we might see small resource hubs popping up around the 3rd Avenue location or near some of the other places where we're seeing people congregate.
Nancy,
Downtown.
Nancy, we have a question. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to provide some context to this, I have 2 questions. Can you talk to us, and it may come a little bit later, and I'm sorry if I jumped ahead, the total capacity we currently have at shelter, and is it sufficient for us to go ahead and abate current camps? And then do we have a camp abatement start date?
Pulling up the, I think last night was the largest night we saw at shelter with a total of 360 people at the mass shelter site. That site can go up to 480. So we do have some bandwidth there, as you saw in the slide. And if you don't mind, this was my last slide, the additional support is needed slide. But I'd like to go back to the slide that shows the camp numbers. You see that when you look at, or I don't have the slide number here, but it says shelter usage at the top of the slide I'm referring to right now. If you look at the slide that where it says April 9th versus March 9th, you can see that a number of our existing shelters are reduced in their number. They're reduced for 2 reasons. One is each shelter is refiguring their numbers to see what their new capacity will be if they maintain a 6-foot distancing. As we look forward to 18 months or 2 years, as we see the waves of this health crisis coming in, those shelters are going to want to maintain 6-foot distance over that time. So we're collecting their new numbers, if you will, from them. But you can see that they also sort of hung on to people who came into shelter before the emergency orders went out, and they have not reopened to new people coming in, some of them, particularly the ones you can see with the lower numbers, because they're concerned that they might be introducing someone who's ill into that population, that vulnerable population. We're working on ways to assist those groups in working with our medical screening project through OPA to clear people or to try to identify people who we don't believe would be introducing the virus into those locations. So we have space. It's just a matter of whether we want to continue to maximize the mass shelter space or if we want to do this rebalancing work and try to get people to those locations as we go.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a follow-up to that last point?
Yes.
Thank you. Couldn't those things occur simultaneously? Couldn't we work on the rebalancing and getting medical protocols for the other shelters while also not having people camp and go into mass shelter either in the interim or right now?
Chair, I believe the answer is yes. And I didn't answer your last question. The Parks and Recreation crew to do normal camp abatement. I would like to clarify that we've sent the request for National Guard, but we have not heard back from the state as to whether that's approved, to my knowledge. And so we're planning to move forward with our regular system, which ramps up around May 1st. And so on April 30th, we will be beginning to mark out the zones that we will do for the first abatement notification.
Nancy, can I ask a follow-up to that then? I'm sorry, I'm a little confused about how you intend to use National Guard members. Are you saying that National Guard members will be part of the crews that do camp abatement? That will have uniformed soldiers going into these camps?
Mr. Chair, through the cleanup portion, assisting with cleanup, not the abatement process. The police will still perform that.
Okay. It's interesting. I think that on this body, I think we understand the difference between the two. But if the visual is still uniformed soldiers breaking down tents and throwing them into dumpsters, I think the administration might want to reconsider that, or think very hard before we go down that road. Anyway.
Mr.
Are there any
Chair.
other questions?
Yeah,
Mr. Constant?
A comment to that. I'm not advocating or opposing, but I can tell you more than a year ago, I had neighbors in South Addition begging for the National Guard to help clean up the camps. The unabated camp process that's occurring at this time or last summer, but now in a highlighted way more than ever before, is causing massive conflicts and problems, healthcare issues, violation of personal property and safety. And we have to do something assertive to address this. We can't just say we'll get to it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. It was noted to me 2 weeks ago that we would have camps abated around the arena in the greenbelts. And I got another text, the third in a series, that said, oh yeah, we're going to post them this Friday, which is the third Friday in a row in which the posting was apparently going to happen, but the camps are still going. And so what I'm hoping we get out of this work session and this conversation is some kind of clear message to the public that we aren't just going to sit back and wait, but instead we're going to move forward with figuring out what can happen around 3rd Avenue, all over the downtown, and in the greenbelts to address the fact that we have mobs of people rolling around at will, violating people's property and causing harm.
Ms. Berg, did you finish your presentation? Yes. Okay. We have another question from Mrs. Alatel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to ask a more pointed question. Is there any intention to post notice and abate the camp on 3rd Avenue? And if so, when? And if not, why not? Thanks.
So I'm going to speak for the process as it stands today. The Parks and Rec crews are unable to hire seasonal staff. If they hire before May, that means we short-end our season before the end of October. And so the camp abatement process for years has run roughly May through October, depending on snowpack. This year, there is quite a bit of snowpack that's remaining, and it makes cleanup, which is the key part of the camp abatement process, a challenge to work with. So Parks and Rec begins their hiring in May. They will have people on board in May, and the first camp abatement zone is scheduled for April 30th.
So may I ask a quick follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Has APD assessed the camp on 3rd Avenue, the large one that's kind of growing, for possibly abatement? Because I do know that we posted some camps already with a 72-hour notice that were closer to the arenas. And of course, APD made that call. And I know that APD is having to expend some considerable resources going repeatedly to that camp. So I guess I'd like to know what assessments occurred and to what extent they've made a public health and safety assessment as to maybe, I mean, abating the camp, but maybe holding cleanup for later?
So one of the APD has been out to the 3rd Avenue, not just the flat location, the HLB property, but the slopes behind. They've also looked at Chester Creek and the number of camps that are down there, and they recommend those 2 areas as the first ones that we do for zone abatement. The one camp that was determined to be at the level of needing 72-hour cleanup was one that was in Chester Creek, and you know the cleanup is the key. If you don't go in and clean out the camp, a new one moves right back in. And so the 72-hour one that was done down in Chester Creek ran us about $10,000. So if we want to, you know, as a community, use a contractor and do those entire locations, that would be a considerable amount of money. So I think that's, you know, that's a question that's a policy question.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry, we have Mr. Gates first. Mr. Gates? Mr. Gates, did you want to speak? Oh, he was highlighting his question in the chat. He says, shelter usage slide, why does it say 141 on March 9th for the mass shelter site? I thought those didn't convert to shelter until later. Nancy, can you speak to that question in the chat?
This line that says Ben Boki and Sullivan Arena would probably be better labeled as the contractor that operates that shelter for us. And so March 9th was Beans Cafe's prior location, and their maximum number for that location was 166. So on March 9th, they have 141 people of the 166 spaces available. And then March 22nd, everything changed, and that contract was increased. It wasn't quite at the level that it's at now. We started with fewer spaces due to limitations on costs and some of the setup that needed to happen. But the number on April 9th was 326 of the total number that was higher for Ben Boki and Sullivan Arena.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Constant.
Thank you. So this is in 2 parts. The first part is if it's money that we're waiting on to begin the abatement at 3rd Avenue, then I think that we are operating now under an emergency declaration that allows the administration to go outside of the procurement process to do this work. And so if we're afraid that the secondary impacts of moving away from our original shelter path because of our emergency response is going to cost us more money on the back end, I would assert that we as a body need to make it plain to the administration that allowing that 3rd Avenue to continue unabated is not an acceptable policy, that we should do that as part of the emergency expenditures. Now, there's a question that really I am trying to grasp here the answer to. So we recognize that the old setup, the Brother Francis Shelter, isn't doing it at that location. Instead, they're doing medically fragile people very limited. We have the mass shelter, which is doing the majority of the pull. And then we have a bunch of people who've been trespassed out of there or who are choosing not to use it because it's not quite as convenient as they'd like it to be. We are allowing those people essentially free range of the downtown. They can be wherever they want because we're not engaging in any kind of abatement practices. They have decided that their safest place to be, their best place to be is 3rd and Ingra for the most part. There are some small pockets of people in other locations. So we have created a de facto legal place to camp, at least until the 10th of May, which is about a month from now. And so what practical measures are we going to put in place to make that a regulated legal camp if we're going to leave it there for the next 3 weeks?
Nancy, can you or someone else from administration speak to that?
It feels like it's going above my pay grade.
That's why I was hoping Chris would be here, because I handed them this question 10 days ago and asked for an answer before the work session. And it is an executive question. I've had this conversation with the mayor. We either are allowing this free-for-all, as it is, where people are going in and out with guns and God knows what's going on there. Your worst imaginings probably don't cover half of it. Or we're going to regulate it. We have two choices, and I don't know what the answer is. I'd hope that the answer to that question would come in this work session, as was asked in advance, so I wouldn't be, dropping a bomb on anyone's head. Jason?
Is Jason in this meeting? No.
Is, but I don't know if he's on.
Okay.
I'm sure he's
Ms. Zolotel, you have a question?
That question went unanswered.
Thank you. So to what extent have we been able to, or are we planning to do outreach with folks who we don't believe are necessarily in shelter, but we do see them out in the community, and we presume that they're either one, know they're camping, or presume that they might be camping, to inform them about the availability of shelter at the mass shelter, and also about a pandemic and social distancing. Are there any plans for that right now?
Through the chair, there are plans for that. It was also one of the reasons why I wanted to walk you through what's happening in the nonprofit sector, that we have a fairly reduced workforce right now. And so the parking lot resource hub is key, because it signals to the nonprofits that the municipality is going to support the work. And Jasmine and the Homeless Coalition are putting together a rotating schedule of outreach for the rest of the community, and that, I understand, is also beginning to be stood up for May. So at the moment, the answer to your question would be extremely limited. We just don't have the workforce, even that we had a month and a half ago. Going forward, we want to encourage and support that work to happen again.
Is there any possibility that work, while I understand we want our community partners definitely to do it, in the interim, is there any way for the municipality to pick up any of that work with its current resources, or if new resources needed to be allocated?
New resources would need to be allocated.
In terms of, can you tell me a little bit more about that, please?
Well, I mean, just to be frank, the people that would be doing this are, some folks are being deployed from other parts of the municipality and supporting the emergency operations, which is amazing. But the people who understand how to engage and do this kind of work are very few. So there's maybe 3 or 5 of us. And, we're all tied up trying to keep the shelter safe, keep the resources flowing, and doing those things. So we really just don't have the bodies on the ground to do it.
Okay. Let's see. Nancy or anyone else from the administration, do you have anything more?
Mr. Chair, this is Ms. Zolotel. I know we have Jasmine from the coalition on. Can we see if she has anything she'd like to update us with?
That would be great.
In this area that we're discussing?
Yes, absolutely. And if there's anyone else who would like to speak, please put it in the chat. We'll open up the chat box. Can you open the chat? And I'll be happy to call on you if you are a relevant sort of subject matter expert on this stuff. So yeah, Ms. Boyle.
Through the chair, thank you. I think Nancy captured it high level right now. We have developed an initial outreach protocol. We reviewed that with APD, specifically the CAT team and the mobile intervention team, certainly with the administration and the EOC group that we're working with. And as Nancy alluded to earlier in the call, the two challenges right now are that as of last week, 100% of our existing outreach employees in the city were not working in the field, and were either deployed to do alternative work or were working virtually. And so part of developing that outreach protocol had the goal that we wanted to help our social service partners to see what we were going to be asking their teams to do, and to sort of settle any fears or concerns about the body of work that we're going to ask people to undergo. Of course, the Assembly is aware that strategically the coalition had agreed to take over outreach coordination this year. This is work that historically the MIT had done. So now we're looking at outreach coordination in the time of COVID, which of course we're all discussing how complicated that is when we take into consideration the public health risks for employees, for the general community, and for people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We have 3 outreach workers that we might be able to deploy in the coming weeks. We actually have a meeting about this tomorrow to sort of more formally go through our ask. But essentially, as Nancy alluded to, the plan for as long as we are undergoing the different community processes in the time of COVID that have been stood up is to do an initial canvas to all known unsheltered locations. So that would include camps, that would also include places that we know people may be sleeping in vehicles, street corners, alleyways, business storefronts that people may have been identified as being unsheltered. And the idea is to get to all of those places at least one time with outreach professionals to explain to people basic information about COVID, about social distancing, about the fact that shelter locations and accessibility, food locations and accessibility, mail services, all of that has changed. And as Nancy pointed out, we haven't had a chance to get out to the community of unsheltered people and tell them that everything has changed. So we do have reason to believe that they may not be aware of all the specific nuances that members of the community who are watching the news have access to details around. So the plan is to do an initial canvas, to very deeply share information with the individuals who are unsheltered, let them know where they can come to us for help. Specifically, goal number 1 is absolutely to help people tap into our shelter system, and to help people understand that there is a place for them to go where they can receive medical care and they can get additional information. But if people choose not to come to those shelters, we do want an ongoing place where they can come visit us and get connected to outreach, because they may not come the first time, but they may come the second or the third time that we are available. And that's what Nancy described as the resource hub that's going to be set up at Bilkie Sullivan. And our vision of setting up just a few more smaller locations where we're doing that same body of work and can continue trying to relationship build and woo our unsheltered people to come to us and get connected. All of you are aware, we've talked about this many times, that the first point of contact usually doesn't get people into shelter. So really the vision here is to get creative about not only that initial canvas, but ongoing opportunities for people to get to us so we can get them the care that they need and help address the community concerns.
Okay. Are there any questions for Ms. Boyle?
So if I might summarize, Jasmine, then the answer is we're really only doing as limited as we have the resources for, and so we haven't even been to 3rd Avenue yet.
Social service providers have not gone to 3rd Avenue yet. I do believe that the police have been down there, but I'll let Nancy respond to that.
What I meant, though, is our appointed lead in community engagement, however that's framed, has not been there yet.
Through the chair, that's correct, to my knowledge.
Okay. So Ms. Boyle has gone. Who's the other person you suggested? Ms. Boyle. There was someone else. No? Okay. Oh, yeah. Ms. Moser, would you like to speak at all?
This is Amanda. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Assemblymember Constant and I chatted over the weekend, and I just wanted to give an update to the Assembly. Our team, the inspectors, we do continue to patrol the 120 blocks of the downtown improvement district. We have been identified as essential infrastructure by both the mayor's office as well as Commissioner Crum's office. We are in an interesting space. Our team, we function as sort of a security, but we are not law enforcement. We are also not social service providers, and our team has seen an increase in the number of folks that we are encountering in doorways, and our team is functioning under some pretty direct, specific directives. We are not getting closer than 6 feet as we're encountering folks. We are sort of gently encouraging folks to move along if they are on private property, but we are not directly engaging in any way that puts our team at risk. We have reached out to the Anchorage Police Department and thanked them for their continued support by having the downtown patrol. And as of late last week, I know that they were still operating. I am not sure if they have been out this week, but that is an incredibly important part for the downtown officers to be out in the downtown spaces. There are less folks downtown. There's just an increased risk. So that is my update, and thank you for all the work that this group is doing.
Thank you, Ms. Moser. Are there any questions for Ms. Moser?
You know, Amanda, this is Christopher, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
My question for you is, would you please kind of narrate a little bit about what it's like in the downtown from your perspective right now? You gave it kind of a high-level description saying we're challenging, we have parameters. Can you give a little bit of sense of flavor of what has occurred in the last 3 weeks?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, our team patrols the downtown improvement district. We are out on foot from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's part of our business model. For years, we have built relationships with folks in the downtown area and folks that are in the downtown area for a variety of reasons. Over the past few weeks, we are encountering folks that haven't really been in the downtown area before, and it is folks that we haven't built relationships with, and it hasn't been as easy to ask folks to move along off of private property. It is a little bit rougher than it has been in the past, and I think what I'm hearing from my team is that they're encountering 30 to 40 folks each day. Folks are in large groups. Folks will be in groups of 7 to 10 in front of businesses and in doorways. And our team patrols in teams of 2. We are currently patrolling on opposite sides of the street to make sure that we are following all directives from the state and local government. And our team is not approaching these larger groups of folks as they are outnumbered. But as we are able, encouraging folks to move along.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Moser.
I have more questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Constant.
Is Rob Couples on the line? I would really like to hear from someone on 3rd Avenue who can give a reasonable operant description of how life is right now.
Yes, how do you unmute?
Ron, I appreciate your perspective, but I'd rather hear from Rob.
Is Rob on the phone?
He said he was.
Do you see him, Desiree?
I don't see anybody by the name of
No,
Rob.
he doesn't appear to be there. Okay. This technology is making me crazy. Our current order of operations is making this work impossible, because it's easy in euphemism to suggest that we're doing everything we can do, and the fact is this community's goodwill is expressed into the nightmare horror show at 3rd Avenue. We had an incident where there was a car robber, gun traced right back to the tents on 3rd and Ingra. And it's just getting to the point where we can't continue to turn our head from the crushing problem that we're tolerating at 3rd Avenue. And, it's drug dealers operating out of the tents. It is overt going to the bathroom on the street. Thankfully, to the administration and their team, they put in a dumpster that was filled up on the first day and continues to be filled up with a lot of personal property that came from other people. And we need an answer to this problem. The question we didn't get into at all in this work session heretofore, and probably won't and maybe shouldn't, is the conversation about the executive orders and homelessness and what the rules are on that and what's coming forward to us tomorrow night. But our tacit tolerance for this legal camp can't come without some kind of organization and order being instituted on that property. Because if we're going to let people camp there, we can't let it be a free-for-all, because that is harming people. There is no dignity in them being allowed to camp in the manner that they are. There is no dignity for the people who are living nearby there. And there is no dignity for us as leaders of this city if we tolerate that.
Ms. Zolotel, you have a question for Amanda? For Ms. Moser?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Mosher, can you tell me to what extent, if at all, your ambassadors, who thank you for their good work, are able to let folks know when they encounter them that there is a place for them to go at shelters? This is Amanda. I had been connecting with Jasmine and her team, and we are in the process of working out a system where our team is able to share more information. So that is in the works, but it has not been happening so far. Thank you.
Okay. Where'd that comment go?
She must have deleted it.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got a little bit more time. Are there members of the public who would like to speak? We don't generally do that at work sessions, but because this is noticed until 3. So if there are folks that would like to speak, we could give you 3 minutes. What'd you say?
Yeah, this is Eugene Haberman.
I'm sorry, say again?
This is Eugene Carl Haberman.
Oh, really? Look at that. Okay, all right, you'll have 3 minutes. Yeah, speak to the issue of homelessness, please, or we will mute your phone.
Well, my name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I'll be very brief. But I have been listening to your meetings by way of what you've been doing. This meeting and those 2 meetings that you had last Friday with respect. But whatever issue you're addressing, it's difficult to address it. But the technology you use is not set up in a way for us to engage appropriately. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman.
Trying, but
Thank you. Okay, so now, is there anyone who has any substantive comments about the situation at 3rd Avenue or homelessness more broadly, hopefully in the downtown? I think that's what we're focusing on today.
Do you want me to unmute Ron?
Yeah, oh yeah, so I apologize. Yeah, go ahead, unmute.
am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah, you're on mute. Go ahead, Mr. Aleva.
Okay, I'm at 3rd and Ingra, and I find that this idea of postponing Parks and Rec, why don't you just postpone the virus? Just put that on hold. That would make me feel real comfortable, but that's not realistic. And all the crises that have been declared by the mayor, this Stern Fest that's going on at 3rd and Ingra, and what's happening there beyond reckless endangerment, I'm appalled that anyone would say it was above their pay grade to offer a suggestion or make a decision to immediately abate this. Now, this is morally and civically wrong, and you have to act. unbelievable. And there's nothing that I can do. You already put me in jail for pulling out my gun, which I didn't aim at someone. And you also convicted me of disinfecting. Now this is going the wrong direction, and it's going to be too late. So you've got to have some courage. I don't know, maybe you all should stand up. I think you're sitting on your brains and give them time to function. And then make a courageous decision, call out the guard. Those people have respect for a uniform, not an orange vest, but a uniform. Because APD doesn't have any respect. They lost their communications and their respect. Bring out the guard, get some literature out there, get the signage out there, 6 feet, wash your hands, and stay home. None of that is occurring. We're self-destructing. So I call on this leadership. Please act now. The delay is only going to make things worse. And I can answer any questions, but I'm deeply disappointed in the lack of action in getting more verbal diarrhea and drafts from allegedly leaders. So do you have any questions of me?
No one has indicated to me that they have questions for you, Ron. I'll give just a quick second
You
here.
scare me. If there was any fear, it's in that kind of leadership. That's fearful. 3 weeks have gone by. And out of 200 emails, I got 4 answers.
Thank you, Mr. Aleva.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Aleva. Mrs. Alatel, you have a question for Ms. Burke?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. We had talked about 75 individuals who are trespassed from mass shelter. Do we have a plan for where those folks should go?
We are developing a list of not just those folks that we encounter there, but the adult system, so that we can figure out which organizations they're connected to and look at plans for where they should go. But generally, we work with everyone individually, but we don't have enough housing spaces in the community, and we don't have enough resources right now. So we do the best we can with everyone, that we can identify.
Thank you, Ms. Alatel. Ms. Dobbin, you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Maybe speak up a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering, I don't know if this is for Nancy or for, well, I guess it's probably for Nancy, but as far as the CARES Act that was recently passed in Congress, I understand that there's a sizable amount of money coming to the state for homeless services and homeless prevention, and I was just wondering if some of that money might be used either to move people into housing or just what your vision for the use of that money is. And then my other question was just under the emergency order, can the police not just move people who are congregating less than 6 feet of space, or just what are the procedures that the police can take at this point with the emergency to break up large groups of people? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Burke?
I'm happy to speak to the first question and what I know of police operations, but I'm certainly not a representative for the police. So the CARES Act, there are funds that are coming through the CARES Act. There were funds that came through Alaska, the state of Alaska, through Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. There are other opportunities through the HUD funds that come into the COC, not only for new money, but to use money in a different way. And so Jasmine's organization is convening all of those housing providers to make sure that everyone is aware of what's coming and understands how we might use it. But it's going to take us a minute. We don't understand all of the new requirements or the lessening of requirements that are happening. So we have the health department, the coalition to end homelessness, and others working on understanding that piece. To be quick, in the moment, there was a new funding allocation that was provided to Catholic Social Services to address hard because of through devices.
Nancy, we can hear you.
That was Gina.
Oh, I'm
That
sorry.
was someone else.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, so you can move. So there is a rapid rehousing program that's open right now, which is where we start with the resource hub, looking for people who might be eligible for that program or for any others that are open right now. And then from there, we plan to start plugging in those federal resources to keep the momentum of people being housed. The police, in terms of the emergency orders, all of the rights that people have for property and notice remain intact. So for camping, there is still a requirement to do the notification. The question that the Assembly, I think, is struggling with, and the administration to some extent, has been how quickly can we ramp that up? What resources would we use to do cleaning? And how quickly can we get out to these areas that are quite populated right now?
I have a question on that, Nancy, and I'll note that we did invite both chiefs to this work session. I believe we invited to the Friday version, but they were also invited to this one. I don't think the chiefs are here, unless I'm mistaken. But to what degree, we're all under the Ninth Circuit precedent and that body of law. It looks like we might have an attorney on the line too. To what degree are those rules altered by the current state of emergency, and have any other jurisdictions like California or Oregon or Boise, have they done anything differently during this time of emergency to do rapid abatement of some kind?
In the queue.
Through the chair, this is Kate Vogel on the phone, if I can answer.
Oh, great. Yes, thank you, Ms. Vogel. I didn't realize you were here.
Yeah, no, been listening in. So we've got some guidance from the CDC right now, which says, with respect to homeless populations, unless you have non-congregate housing to offer them, to consider not abating camps because it might lead to more spread of the disease as settled groups mix and combine with other areas. Different communities have responded differently and with mixed success. On the homelessness issue, I was just reading an article this morning about San Francisco having...
No, I don't.
Sorry, there's a little bit of interference on the phone. If you could mute. Okay. Anyway, different communities have responded in different ways, including by trying to some have just purchased more hotel room type settings to send people. Other communities have had big outbreaks among their homeless shelters, which is a problem, obviously, and one that they're addressing. In many ways, Anchorage's model, which is not just reconfiguring shelter space so that there's more social distancing, but then also standing up a separate quarantine and isolation facility at the density, is at the vanguard of what communities are looking to do. But it certainly presents a problem with what to do about individuals who do not want to go to that sort of shelter setting, and some communities have stepped back their abatement and allowed more camps and tents as a response to the virus. So I know that that's probably not the answer that folks here were hoping to hear. In terms of the legal constraints that we're under and what is freed up, this would count as an exigent circumstance that could reduce the amount of notice that we might need to give from the 10-day notice to a shorter amount of notice on abatement, but that's not the primary driver right now, as you've heard. I think it's
personnel related. And then I think I'm bouncing back to a question one before this, which was what do the emergency orders say and do with respect to the homeless? Right now, the Hunger Down order does not address homeless people specifically. It exempts them in the current version of Hunger Down. That is modeled off of the communities that issued shelter-in-place orders before Anchorage did, and those, including the California communities that did so. I think that carve-out is an intent to remain constitutional because there's a real concern, and we've been forbidden from simply criminalizing homelessness. And likewise, we've got a really difficult problem with individuals who've been trespassed from a shelter and then figuring out how to respond to them on an enforcement side, because the Ninth Circuit has told us that we aren't allowed to fine or criminalize the act of being homeless unless there is a shelter that that person can go to. So the people who are particularly problematic, such that they've been trespassed from shelters, are also particularly hard to deal with on an enforcement side. And then stepping back, looking at what's happening in enforcement generally right now, the court system is massively concerned about the spread of COVID-19 within the jail system, and as a result has really curtailed a willingness to house individuals or permit their arrests on misdemeanor charges. So, and by arrest I mean the sort of the housing, not the charge of release idea. So there are a lot of challenges to this situation. A lot of communities, including some CDC guidance, would say leave people in place. I think Anchorage was looking for a middle ground between move people multiple times and have as much contact as possible with them and leave everyone in place regardless of how problematic their presence is where they are. So
thank you, Ms. Vogel. We have a question. We have a question from Mr. Constant.
So, Ms. Vogel, does all of that, you gave all this great story, the same story we've been hearing for the last 4 or 5 years. There wasn't anything really that's changed other than it's not advisable to abate them into a place where they might spread disease. But we now recognize, of course, all these people at 3rd and Ingra are having a raging party all shoulder to shoulder. You know, they're sharing the same breath, they're sharing the same beer, they're sharing the same bottle. So does anything in all of this jurisprudence restrict us from bringing security to that location and setting up some kind of structure in that location so that those people can't continue to just have this crazy situation going on there? Because all of the arguments just made are on the enforcement and jail side, but none of them are on the side of us doing our responsibility to ensure the safety of those people and the people around them.
Through the chair, I'm not sure quite how to answer that. It is legally permissible to abate. It is legally problematic to try to arrest people for being homeless when you don't have a place to send them. And the current CDC guidance is not just about do you have this place to send them, but or do you have shelter space to send them, but encouraging communities to think about what abatement means, about the mixing of different homeless encampments with each other.
So, Ms. Vogel, can I tailor that question slightly?
Very good policy.
Can I tailor that?
Policy question about what do you do with when the presence is particularly negative, and I don't think it prohibits going in there, sending police.
All right.
But we do have a jail problem on the other side.
Right, but between abatement and arrest, there's a whole array of things that could happen that could clean the space, that could apply some sort of order and discipline that doesn't currently exist, that could protect the neighborhood around there. That's an area that I think the administration needs to begin to investigate what its options are.
Okay. I think that's all in terms of questions. Let's see here. Yep, I think that's it. I don't have any other questions in the queue. Are there any other folks on the line?
There's a couple of
Okay. All right.
I don't know if you'll even.
No, that's fine. Okay, with that, we're going to end this work session, and I'm sure there will be more discussion of this on Tuesday night. For folks that want to testify on Tuesday night, please send an email to testimony@anchorageak.gov, and we will call you so that you have the opportunity to testify. This work session is adjourned.